Good day. I'm honored and privileged to have been invited to present at this Congress on resistance to restore human rights and dignity. In preparation for my address today, I've studied some of the words of Imam Reza, peace be upon him. I will draw heavily on his words since they remain as important and relevant today as when they were first written. Today, the world is witnessing genocide occurring against the people of Palestine. Palestinians have been resisting the brutal Zionist oppression under which the nation has lived for over 70 years, and that resistance has never surrendered and will never surrender. Palestinians only seek the basic rights described by Imam Reza. I will discuss just a few of them today. Under the category of individual rights, Imam Reza said this, quote, "Individual rights include those rights that belong to each person as a human being. These rights mean the protection of individual independence and personal freedoms," close quote. Every human being is entitled to this and other rights simply because he or she exists. Each person has intrinsic value simply due to their humanity. He further said this, that everyone has the right to life. Quote, "Every person has the right to protect his or her life, and governments are obliged to protect it." During the current genocide, spokespeople for the murderous Zionist entity and its main sponsor, the equally murderous United States, talk about Israel's so-called right to defend itself. Under international law, there is no right for an occupying country to defend itself from its victim, and the slaughter of innocent men, women, and children, including infants, can in no way be seen as defense. Imam Reza discussed this too. In speaking of humanitarian rights, he discussed the need to protect civilians in times of war. Quote, "When Mamun informed Imam Reza about the conquest of some village in Kabul, the Imam said, 'Does the conquest of a village of the people of polytheism bring you joy?' Mamun replied, 'Isn't there joy and happiness in this conquest?' The Imam said, 'O Emir, fear Allah regarding the Ummah of Muhammad, peace be upon him, and the mission that Allah has given you.'" Close quote. He further discussed the condition of the people under conquest, conditions similar to what people in Palestine are experiencing, and reminded Mamun of his responsibilities. Quote, "They are constantly wronged and oppressed in your presence, while they have no one to seek justice from, and those who have power over them do not observe any covenant or pact, neither with Allah nor with the people. The people of that land are passing through a time of great hardship and misfortune, unable to provide for themselves, without anyone to complain to about their miserable condition, while their hands cannot reach the hands of the Exalted One. O Emir, fear Allah and attend to the affairs of the Muslims." Close quote. In the context of the current genocide, I believe that we can expand the Imam's intention to attend to the affairs of all those who are suffering under brutal oppression. In my reading, I found this quotation. Again, this is as timely and as important today as it has ever been. Quote, "God has forbidden the killing of a human being, because to allow it is the ruin and destruction of mankind, the corruption of rationality." We see the Zionist entity in the United States killing men, women, and children indiscriminately, especially today throughout the Middle East. Resistance movements throughout the Middle East are only seeking these rights and other basic rights. Individual rights include, as stated by Imam Reza, the right to freedom of expression. Every person has the right to express their opinion freely. This means, in part, that journalists must be free to document, publish, and widely distribute information vital to either obtaining or maintaining individual rights. Since October of 2023, the Zionist entity has murdered close to 150 journalists in Palestine, mostly in Gaza. It has injured dozens more and arrested some. Yet the people of Palestine continue to resist, using social media to inform the world of the horrors they are experiencing. The Imam's writings covered a wide variety of topics related to the rights of humans, and this included environmental rights. He stated that every individual has the right to live in a healthy and sustainable environment. The Zionist entity has destroyed nearly all the infrastructure of the Gaza Strip and used chemical weapons, mainly white phosphorus, which is banned by international law, against the Palestinians. There is now no farming able to be done, and the air is heavily polluted with the bombs and the smoke and debris that fill it from the incessant bombings. Today there are millions of refugees fleeing violence, poverty, and oppression. Many governments, and sadly many people in several countries, work to prevent refugees from entering their borders. The Imam was clear on the rights of refugees. He stated that, quote, Refugees and migrants should have access to adequate health care, education, and housing. Close quote. Within the borders of the Zionist entity, such people are treated as second-class citizens. In the United States, the newly elected and former president has vowed to deport migrants by the millions. There are movements within many countries that are resisting the efforts of their governments to deport desperate migrants back to the horrendous conditions they have escaped from, and are attempting to provide justice for immigrants. These are people resisting the racist practices of their governments. Imam Riza was also clear on the individual rights that must be granted to women and children, with both groups being entitled to protection from harm. Resistance fighters in Palestine and throughout the Middle East strive to protect these vulnerable populations, and while they are greatly overwhelmed by U.S.-provided weaponry, they take this responsibility seriously. One wonders, however, how the leaders of countries that have normalized relations with the apartheid regime and who are not opposing the current genocide are able to live with themselves. Do they simply ignore the teachings of the Imam Riza? And what of other, mainly Western governments that continue to provide weaponry to the apartheid regime? In many Western nations, numerous demonstrations have been held, some bringing up to 1 million people and more to support Palestinian resistance. These demonstrations have been constant since October of 2023. While many of these Western governments continue to support genocide, their citizens continue to resist. What is our obligation? Imam Riza, peace be upon him, has said, quote, "The most noble and honorable of character traits is doing good, helping the distressed, fulfilling the hope of the hopeful, confirming the imagination of the hopeful, and having many friends in life and those who weep after death." Close quote. By doing good and helping the distressed, we will be assured of having many friends who will weep after our death. Are we as a society fulfilling this noble calling? How much good is society doing in helping the distressed? Resistance fighters in the Middle East and people around the world who support them are helping to fulfill the hope of the hopeful. It is our responsibility to provide more hope, to end the brutal oppression of Palestine and the constant bombing of other Middle East nations by Israel and Western nations. This is our purpose, and we must constantly strive to fulfill it. Thank you.